I want to start with your origins, your identity growing up in London, and what got you into the work that you're doing today, which is basically helping the Black youth in London.
Oh, wow. Gosh. I was one of these young people that got into a lot of trouble as a young person in my neighbourhood. I lived in a really odd place, which was Highbury in Islington. And in those days, we sat in the middle grounds between the kind of really tough estates. I liked those tough estates, and they just had a big draw for me. And all my friends lived there. So I ended up becoming quite associated with a lot of people. I wasn't aligned to any particular quote unquote gang, but I just got involved in lots of problems and lots of youth conflict issues and the usual things that kind of spun off that. That led to a bit of a tough time kind of growing up. I spent a bit of time in Chelmsford. I had to actually go into the adult prison, which was a huge shock for a 19-year-old just coming out of being excluded from school, having a little bit of a sort of tough kind of life. I was working in between all of that, with working in furniture shops and all sorts of things, working with lots of amazing people. But at the night time and the weekends, I kind of went astray. And that sort of experience around the criminal justice system and being arrested a lot and then coming out, my youth workers approached me and asked me to kind of give a talk to some of the new kids coming into the youth club. And they said, why don't you give them a talk just to sort of tell them what you did and what happened? And they said to me, Paul, you got a bit of a gift. You can talk to young people, you can connect with them. I think they use words like sincere and all that kind of stuff.
Authentic.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, it was like that type of stuff. And I said, yeah, I don't mind. And they said, do you know that you can do this work? It's like youth work doesn't necessarily require all of these qualifications and stuff. And it sort of seems like quite a natural progression of what you do and what you talk about. Would you like to do it? And I sort of said, yeah. And they asked me to do some voluntary work. And then I remember there was a course that was run by the North London Polytechnic. And the North London Polytechnic course was called Race, Community and Society. And I was just so intrigued by that. And I went to that course. And part of the course, you had to go off and do more voluntary work. And then I went to work for Camden. That led to me getting a job in Camden in the youth services in Islington and Camden. I had those two jobs. And I was like, oh, wow, you can actually get paid to talk to young people. And that was like quite weird. It was just, I didn't know you could actually be paid for this. And I didn't realise my youth workers were actually paid as well.
Incredible.
And I ended up becoming trained. I went back to night school. I remember when I was about 20, I signed up to a lot of night school. I did some arts classes because I'm a little bit creative as well. So I did lots of other kind of qualifications and courses, and that sort of kept me in the conversation with my seniors. And I ended up doing a sort of social worker course, but it was part of a sort of, I think it was called Set Soir, something like that. Did aspects of that, and that actually got me into criminal justice. And I became a coach working with young people through probation, and then I got into youth justice, and then I ended up becoming a youth justice worker. And then from that, I became linked to a big regeneration project in Camden, and they needed ideas for the community for a regeneration project in the very early 90s. We won something like 28 million, and they offered me one of the jobs to run of the projects that I developed. I sort of said, no, this is crazy. I wrote 6, and it led me to getting a job managing 6 programs. And I stayed in that neighbourhood for about 7 years, running a whole range of things like community festivals, community outreach projects, youth club stuff, and a whole range of outreach programs, sort of supporting kids from all different parts and different backgrounds.
Let's take it back a bit to when you were young and you were growing up in Highbury and Islington, between these two estates, getting into a little bit of trouble. You are of Nigerian descent. Your parents, what was the makeup with your parents? Was it your dad that was Nigerian, or was it your mum?
Yeah. Oh, my dad was a very authoritarian Nigerian. My mum and dad split up, and I was at that critical phase transitioning from very much from primary school to secondary school. And at that point, I felt that's where you need that sort of parenting, that sort of tough love. And that wasn't there. And for somebody who's coming out of that, almost rejecting that as well, being younger, I think that's what kind of set me out. My dad was not around in that critical period. And I think that's where I ended up sort of trying to make my own play in the world, and without the advice and guidance of my dad. But my dad was very central, because although he came back when I was about 16, we built a little bit of a relationship back. So I had him in the background, and he was always trying to advise me, don't do this, don't do that, and this is where you're going to end up. And I'd never forget when I came out of Chelmsford and woke up one morning, my dad was just there in the room. And I just remember his words so clearly about, and I don't want to do the accent.
You can try. Go ahead.
He just said, what did I tell you? What has become of that? I was looking at him with no words. I kind of just remembered that moment so much. I think I must have probably cried for probably about 10 days after, constantly realizing how foolish I was. But my dad was such an amazing guy, a very eloquent individual, and also just somebody who was very connected back home, and said, because my uncles, my aunties, he said, look, you need to go and see your cousins. Like, I think this is the time. And if you don't, it's going to be, I don't know what's going to become of you. And I sort of said, I trusted him. So I wrote to my uncle Joe, and I wrote this letter to him saying, thinking of coming back. The way he wrote back, my uncle wrote back, was just the most beautiful letter ever. You can imagine. You are mine. Or, what do you mean?
So when you say thinking of coming back, you mean going back to Nigeria? Oh, I see. So you went back to Nigeria?
Yeah. So
how long?
I went 3 months.
Okay.
Literally, that was it.
Was it life-changing?
It was life-changing, man.
Just those 3 months?
Just those 3 months, yeah.
Wow.
Just those 3 months felt like a year. It was quite tough initially because obviously I wasn't used to mosquitoes. I wasn't used to the lifestyle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I saw I went to the shrine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I saw things that people are talking about today. I was there, I saw there.
Wait, so you saw him perform live?
Why not? Of course. I was there. We hung out.
Hey, right now on the hoodie that I'm wearing, we have Fella on the back.
Is it?
It's a Fella design hoodie. Let me try to show you. Hold on.
Oh, that is really cool.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's lovely. Yeah.
Very appropriate.
I can. And you know what? I never forget how scared I was because my cousin was saying, he's going to yab you. He's going to yab you. So I was.
What does that mean?
Like yabbing. Like his style was you come into the shrine. And when you're in the shrine, you sit down and he's playing his music, he's talking, you've got your dancers left and right, everything's just bubbling, everything's just popping up. And he would just say, hey, you, they're sitting down. And he would just come with some words and you'd be like, what? And he would just say, oh, so what? He would just make fun of you. Yeah. That's what he means by yab. So you got yab, you finished. I was so scared that would happen.
Did that happen to you?
No, it didn't. I was so cool. But I used to swim at the airport hotel, and literally we used to always come back and end up at the shrine and then stay there until it got a bit crazy, and then we rushed off to come home. Because
what year was this?
I went to Nigeria in 1991.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was a baby then.
So I was in Ghana before that in 1989.
Okay.
My best friend, he's half Ghanaian, so I went there first, and it was kind of weird because I didn't want to tell my dad I went there first. I was kind of holding that back from him. The actual thing that tripped me was my cousins. That when I went home, because I'm the oldest son from the oldest son, reverence is just key. Like they would come off the bed, they wouldn't even. So I'd sleep on their bed, they'd sleep on the floor. They would make food.
Respect, yeah.
Wow. The respect that we have in our culture is so amazing. It's compelling enough to make you feel like, hang on, I'm with my cousins who have a fraction of the opportunities I've had. They have, I would say, 10 times the brain and compassion and wisdom. And there's me in the sort of quote unquote rich West not making
the most of it.
And if my cousins were in my place, and that's what I kept just thinking, and I just felt a sense of honour to that, and I just felt there's no way I can go back to the UK and be a loser and hang out with the guys and get into trouble again, and that was it.
Amazing.
And literally from that point, my whole life just changed. Never been arrested, never got in trouble. I've always had money in my pocket. I was able to do things like buy houses and invest in things. And as a result, I'm just so grateful. That whole connection with home, I think, has been a huge driving force for my overall
Definitely. Sounds very pivotal. And what would life be had you not gone to Nigeria for that 3 months, right?
It's the holding of who you are. It's that sort of knowledge of who you are. And I'm still in touch with my cousins, in touch with them almost every other day. One of them's here now. He has a family. I managed to get him here. His younger one is still there. Aki is my name. Saying he's there. And they're a huge motivating force for me. And that connection. I'm always embarrassed because I can't speak the language still to this very day. But I give them all of the usual stuff. They talk.
Yeah. all the usual phrases. Like Bawani.
Those are we've got our inner phrases because I used to go every year for probably about 12 years after that. I never missed school. And one of the things that we have these sort of codes, like, because we used to call it make like a chicken. Our street where we live is DB Street. Street in Abeson, which is in Yanapaja. I don't know if you know.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I know of Iyanokpaja. I don't know it like that. I'm not.
Yeah, you're more like, I'm sure, Ikoyi and all those places there.
I wish I was that rich. But yes, I am more familiar with those type of areas.
Yes, exactly. It was kind of like we would just get into the rituals of greeting others. The moment we left the house, right the way to bus stop or to Federal Estate Gate or somewhere like that before. And we used to just nod to people and people used to call us from far. I knew everybody in my uncle's street, especially in DB Street, which is the name of the street. It doesn't have a name, it's a number and some letters.